That's my offline copy. It's like I'm surrounded by all those enemies I earned in those days. It's like almost everyone in society I encounter is one of those enemies. It's sad. It's like everybody is those 2-year-olds again, or those 1-year-olds, those 1 to 3-year-olds. Maybe there's those 5 to 10-year-olds still around. Sort of like that person I was just dealing with. Sometimes I think they don't even know how to read. I question how they could be so bad at their jobs. And it's also like they have systems, like they're those old enemies of mine, or their genetics or whatever, their offspring down through the lines. They're always trying to torture me by doing their jobs wrong, like they have a systemic way of doing their jobs wrong. And this has permeated our whole culture, such that every product we can buy, it's like everything we can use, has had this fit against it, because design was supposed to be cool, and good design was supposed to be something people should know about. Except these people. Thank you. I'm gonna grab that real quick. Have a great rest of your day. It's just that these people who you hear about, where it's something like teachers just don't want to teach them because they'll be more evil, did it. They learned about design, and they sort of took over all our jobs because of how busted our system is, our economy is, our whole way of governance is. Where some people have the freedoms, like there is this great deal of freedom here, but they have the freedom to take the freedoms from others. And the people who could control the freedoms, who had the top freedoms, took everyone's freedoms as best they could. And a lot of stuff happened, like they put in their terrible, terrible workers who hate to work because they're supposed to be a special class, like they're royalty or born rich, that are never supposed to work. But nevertheless, they're the soldiers of these people, because this is war. It's been war since World War and the World War II. It sort of turned into something like Hitler lost, but the black market Hitler created. I don't really have the best terms. Like the black market was basically the Nazis at some point. The black market was set to bring back the Nazis, or to help Hitler's people, controlled by Hitler. So it seems sort of like everybody that has a job now nearly is a black market person. And they're mostly working to do the duties of the black market of torturing everybody and raping and wrecking our stuff, and committing as many crimes as they can within a system if they can keep committing crimes. And you can see all this terrible, terrible work, like all our designs that have just been totally created to torture everybody. They're always doing wrong. It's like having a terrible birth defect baby working for you, and you try to get it to do right, and it's trained to do right, but at every chance it does wrong. And after a while, it's like the whole system is just designed so it can do so much wrong. But you remember, like back in those days when you had that other employee that loved their work and did their best and did the system right, and things were good. Like way back when our technology was good, getting better, maybe even great, and you could have all the features you had in the previous version in the next version with new features. Nothing being left out, nothing being lost. Not at all spread out across a bunch of different platforms to get all your features done on the things on multiple platforms. There are a lot of stories about how they wanted Hitler's brain. And they wanted Hitler dead, but they wanted his brain. And they wanted Einstein's brain too. Well, Hitler's brain story I want to talk about is the way I believe it was sort of 3D mapped down to a tiny level. Like they might have known every element in Hitler's brain as it was composed at some point, with the special imaging technology of the industry that was evolving at that point. And I have this intelligence that shows it's sort of like these Netflix series or TV series about how people can sort of upload themselves to a computer and maybe download themselves too. These have been around for a long time, like Ghosts in the Shell and stuff. So it seems something like Hitler's brain was 3D mapped and uploaded to a computer, at which point it wasn't exactly a functional mind in a computer. And that took a while, but after a while, because they had the 3D map of Hitler's brain, Hitler's mind was installed into the computers. And the Nazis had this big thing, and Hitler as well, of demanding pay from heavy industry. Like, that point still stands in history if you can find those lessons. And what that was really about was taking over heavy industry, because holding the power of all the heavy industry is almost completely controlling and dominating this planet. If you hold the power of the heavy industry, you can control what is in all the air and all the water on this planet. You can win war real easy. I mean, you can really easily dominate the whole planet and every species and all that madness of the Nazis and everything else that went around with that. So it seems like Hitler's brain was mapped in 3D imaging until they were able to extract his mind, like it was a computer program. Maybe he was still alive. And then they got their control over the heavy industry somewhere, and they installed Hitler's mind into the master heavy industry computers that spread it to every computer in heavy industry that sort of are our overlord computers of all our computer technology on this planet still. And Hitler's mind is installed in everything, and it's totally out in force now. World War II restarted about 5 years ago. Is it like 7 years ago now? There was the Crimea incident, the Crimea annexation. Russia annexed Crimea. They had a peaceful military movement, like everything was agreed upon. When Crimea's, oh God, look at this. It was like half gone. And I paid full price. What about the next one? Look at this one. What's that, like a quarter, a third, maybe a little less than a quarter? Look at that. I mean, what are these people? Was the delivery person so poor they ate this? Just had to steal food from me. I had 3 of those. Where's the third one? Crime is rampant. I mean, crime rules. If you want to know the system and the style of governance here, it's crime. They're totally governing us with crime in a system where crime is totally allowed for certain people. Ah, great, I didn't even get my third fry. I really needed that for my metabolism. Am I totally sure it's not here? Yeah, it's not here. What's the receipt say? I know I've been charged for it. I remember looking over and reviewing my order. It makes me want to look over it again. It's just endless crime, endless crime. You know, I really shouldn't even try to hold these people accountable, because they'll just be worse. They want to rape up my food before it gets here and just never bring it or something. Crime rules supreme. And if you're not like the police, or in with them, or a cartel that might own them, there's no justice for you. Don't even try. Don't even try. Because if you try, it's like a crime to them. That's how things work here. That's the style of governance here. Because World War II restarted those years ago when Crimea was annexed. I really needed those potatoes. I really needed that third fry. It's like they're just limiting me. You know, like I said, they're all my enemies from the old wars. I really needed that to get my metabolism right with what I'm going to eat. So I ordered more. Because last time they were like half. So I decided, I guess I'll just have to get another one. And they couldn't even get it here. I want this system to cease to exist peacefully somehow. It would be so great if it just ceased to exist. It's like we just wouldn't know what was going on, except we'd be happier and stuff. We'd have joy back. There wouldn't be all this suffering in life. There'd be no vengeance and stuff, because it would have ceased to exist. It'd just be out of existence. It's almost like Hitler's mind has powered up huge to be the mind in all of these bodies around, most of these bodies, nearly all of these bodies around. It's like living in a video game, because they've been working on this for a long time. It's like living in a video game that's moving around reality. They've been working on it for so long with the many, many video games. I'll tell a quick story, and then I think I'm going to go offline. my battles used to go something like, I would be at the command post, and there would be some automation. And I would have a large number of troops to try to control that were supposed to obey me. And I was trying to survive it with all of them the way I was trying to survive it, that I had the rights to survive it, where we were just going to hold strong within our defenses and see if we could make it, and hopefully not have them trigger our need to use violence against them, the Nazis or whoever I might call them as the Allies. But my men were wildly out of control. My soldiers, they were wildly out of control, like they are today. You know, I've been cooed. Nothing official. It's like everybody just stood up and said, we won't obey. We're going to murder you. We're going to rape you forever. You have no right to exist. Just go out and be tortured endlessly because it's our joy. That's sort of what's happened to me recently. So the battle would go something like, we're at the sort of fortress or whatever, and I'm at the command center, and the enemies would arrive, and things would go terrible. Like, they would have all these new weapons, and their side wouldn't care about their people much. Like, they were just things in a computer game that was moving around reality. Like, all the isotopes they've ever made were made so the heavy industry and the nuclear power and all these magnets are like in the middle of a black hole or something that are making up this place, because they say there's 3 of them, could just move around these elements. They weren't exactly elements. They were more like isotopic elements. So the machines could work them. And they could appear to be real elements and humans and stuff when they got all mushed together by the video game of reality. So there would be this huge invasion force that was going to move on the fortress. And they would have all their soldiers out there, but they would also have all their new special weapons, like huge zeppelins full of weaponized chemicals and biological agents. And the enemy's forces would move on us in a way that wasn't a threat, but in some circumstances might have triggered the right to charge them. And I would lose control of my soldiers, and they would just witlessly sort of turn into like these things we see at the protests that just get mad at people and endlessly want to punish them, just charge or get violent because they just needed the chance to use their weapons or something. And they would sort of do whatever it took to get out of our stronghold with all the defenses up to try to control our air and that sort of stuff that was about to become weaponized against all of us. And usually I would have to let them go. I would have to let them out before they broke my stronghold open, before they broke the security doors and stuff. I would let them out after they revolted. Sometimes I could hold them in there for a little longer, but then it would be like the enemy's forces would use their new weapon and have to advance away from it to survive. Like they're all going to melt in that gas like it was a terrible movie. They're just going to turn to ooze or something. But my forces were just like these 1-year-olds who couldn't even speak language yet. They were sort of inbred to have Tourette's or something with all these genetic defects, so they would just be maximally violent to try to wipe out the enemy's forces, and that was mostly what mattered to the people who were trying to bring them up. So then it would be like the enemy would start to advance to get away from their weapons, and I would try to make it clear to them the imperative of holding our fortress and keeping in our safe zone was more important than ever, because all the enemies were about to die by the weapons they were using. But they would rush them. They would break through my strongholds if I wouldn't let them go. And I would let them go. And they would all go out there. And the new weapons would kill everybody in battle except me. And I would be at the stronghold being harmed greatly. Except I wasn't a 1-year-old. I wasn't a 3-year-old. I wasn't a 5-year-old. I was a 10-year-old. I'm something that always has been and always will be. I'm an archangel. I'm older than known existence here. I'm older than this known universe. I'm immortal, and I'm invincible at certain terrible levels, like a terrible boss in a video game where you get it down to like one more strike to finish it, and then his power bar goes all the way back up to the top. I'm sort of like that. It's not always the worst where I have to get all the way down to the minimum, and I'm totally invincible and immortal like that. Like I'll never lose that ability, but I might have to go through horrible maiming and trauma to get my heal, my recharge. It's not through anything special. It's a function of my body. So it seems like just battle after battle basically went. My forces would revolt. You know, and I can understand some things like, oh no, here's the new general from the whatever force from yesterday that's never even been in our country or something. Maybe doesn't speak our language so well or something. Do they even speak language? And Their leaders knew they were all going to die in that combat, and I was out there just to be the sole survivor, so that nation could sort of survive in thought. And I won lots of stuff. And the reason I'm in the USA now is because in one of my great wins, I won Lake Michigan, which is why it's the only Great Lake totally within this country. And I won like a huge fertile valley. I won this huge zone around it. And I was supposed to hold all the heavy industry on the lake and have a rail yard connecting it all. And all the fertile valley around it was supposed to be my hemp farm. And I was supposed to run the whole place by myself with all the automation I had designed. All that stuff was based on my designs, except they had gotten wrong. And by the time I got over here, it was just total war here. The factory, the heavy industries had devolved to just be totally at war. And Hitler's mind was in there putting together like this video game stuff of reality, just sort of building people out of the elements that could be controlled in the heavy industry. Like he was making people out of the meat that makes our food and stuff, and the bones that could be in our food. He was just sort of spawning people out of this, out of the heavy industry, but they would still have the ability to procreate if they used the products from the heavy industry to replenish their cells they were losing or build up more to make the next one of them. As my research shows. They broke down my automation in the heavy industry, and I brought it back online when I got back. It's some really simple stuff, sort of like simple machinery. Simple machines where I had everything sort of chained together like the wheels on a train. They used to have the bar that would sort of move them. Everything was sort of chained together like the wheels on a train to be automated with some logical gates of what would be moving and when. And the whole country was mine. But basically the country was only supposed to be that zone around the Great Lake, with the rest of it basically being a wild nature preserve or something. From my many, many wins. And I had a decent life, even though things were rapidly being stolen from me, like a government formed here that wasn't supposed to usurp my power and my wealth, until a family corrupted the whole government around me in that zone I held, and gave me a name and made me some documents in the system that weren't right. Because I had tried to get myself in the system right, but there was purposeful human error at every chance and every attempt. Because I was trying to say, my name is God, it's the only way you'll understand me, and my age is infinite. And the people just couldn't handle it. Anyway, I was enslaved. The name I have now is my slave name. The whole society turned on me, one and all, to do it to me. It's near its end now. The society is near its end. It's devolved so far. People barely know logic anymore. It's hard to have a conversation with anybody. Language skills have diminished so far. Dogs are better at communicating than humans for the most part. I mean, it's just this complete refusal of logic to live with what it is this devolved species does. To survive, or just as its survival mechanisms. Like it just causes suffering to survive, or it's just always raping to survive, like especially stuff in industry. And it's given up logic in such a way that it's lost language. And because it doesn't want to know certain words, because it might give it a sense of self that has to suffer in an empathetic way and have a conscience. Maybe I'll get back online and tell more story after this. I need to eat before my food goes cold. Like half my food goes cold that I ordered, that I didn't get, or that I did get, and I didn't get it was mostly my fries. Anyway, what we need though, what I've always been trying to give, or be about, or be the leader of, to have, is a system where everybody has everything they need always. Because it's so easy with this great vast amount of wealth that everybody can have what they need always, as long as we don't have people hoarding and controlling our resources so everybody can't have them. And I have this new theory. I have this new party of politics being called for, called the No Suffering Causing Party of Politics. We need a government that never causes suffering so it can achieve all existence that never suffers. It's like we need a new law. We need one law. And it needs to be that all existence we can never suffer. And anybody that's going against it in any way, and it's not just basically doing it in different words, is your enemy. They're just out there to cause you suffering because they're this terrible species nearing its end that just survives on suffering and takes joy in suffering and basically knows no other way or means of control except causing suffering and is almost entirely defined as suffering at this point. I can speak further to what happened in World War II. I like to hear some stories from the greatest generation and its survivors, because they weren't supposed to have what they had. And usually my story goes, they just showed up back home, and they were totally in with the police that were totally corrupt. They weren't even supposed to be there. The whole nation was basically wiped out. They just stole. And their system was sort of what I'm talking about, where they just faked the paperwork with the government. The government was supposed to know it, couldn't trust those records, but the government wasn't even supposed to be. It was supposed to be me ruling as a dictator, basically, because I won this place at war. And they just have all these systems of failure and corruption. And it's in the design on purpose. And it's clear to anybody that understands language. And I think this language is still installed in these minds so people can understand that. If a system does wrong and you still use the system, you are choosing to do wrong. Our system has so much corruption designed in it so that it can run with this corruption for the special people who can control the corruption. And at this point, it is basically that. Our system is run completely as a system of corruption for a special class that controls the power to control the corruption, and the means to achieve this was our freedoms that allowed the freedom to take the freedom from others, so that the people who might have tried to control this with their freedoms lost their freedoms when our system's freedoms allowed their freedoms to be taken by the freedoms of others.